Welcome back to another Film Geek movie review. Today, guys, I am super excited because I am off to a special sneak preview of the new film Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, starring Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez. Why am I excited about this? Because, guys, I am an old school D&D kid. I used to play D&D all the way back in elementary school, junior high, high school, up into college. I would probably still be playing D&D today, but, as adulthood goes, people move, things change, and it's just harder to get people together to do these big campaigns anymore. Although I do have friends out there that I could probably piece together and have a gaming session probably by this weekend if I really wanted to. Alright, well, enough about my hobbies. It's time for us to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. So what is the plot of this story? Well, Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez play D&D thieves. Well, I think Chris Pine is more of the thief, and by the looks of things, Michelle Rodriguez is the fighter class, because by the looks of this, they're going to kind of do like an old school D&D party. And you know what? I'm actually kind of hoping that's the way this movie goes. I don't believe that it's based off of any of the books or anything like that that's out there. The villain in this story is a red wizard, which I do know. I think she exists. I think the main villain does exist in one of the books in D&D, but this story, however, has nothing to do with the books, to the best of my knowledge. Maybe I'm wrong. So the story goes as this. A group of thieves steal an item and they give it to this wizard who happens to be evil, and then she uses that item for evil things, and the group has to then try to steal that item back from the evil wizard. This film looks like super fun. I think this is going to be kind of like a fantasy world crime thriller comedy. At least that's what the trailer looks like. The special effects in the trailers, look pretty decent. They looks like they got some good CGI in there, so I'm looking good on that. Looks a lot better than that original D&D movie that came out back in 2000. Let's just say that. Alright guys, well, I have spent enough of your time chewing your ear. It is time for me to get out there and check out the new movie, Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. Welcome back. Just getting home. And you know what, guys? This movie was a lot of fun. This was an absolute pleasure to watch. This is one of those films that just entertains you from the moment it starts to the very end. Yes, there is a lot of humor in this movie, but not a ton. It's got just the right amount. This is not an MCU, Taika Waititi overdose of humor. This is just the right amount of spice. Alright guys, well, it's time for me to do the review portion of my video, and you know what? As I said, solid film. Nothing really to complain about here. Everything, and I mean everything in this movie came together just fine. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the acting. Pretty good. All of the characters are great. They're well developed. You care about them. Not one of the main characters are you just kind of like, whatever with this guy. Every single one of them is an entertaining and fun, well-developed, well-rounded character. Yes, you don't have to dive into everybody's little backstory. You only really get to know a lot about the main characters, but still, they give you enough characterization of your other two characters that it's a lot of fun. The special effects in this movie. Here's the portion where I normally bitch about CGI. I'm not going to bitch about CGI. In fact, it had just the right amount of CGI. I realize that it's a lot easier for movie makers to use CGI with real animals and such like that, so I never have an issue when they put in CGI for animals. That just means an animal's not getting hurt in the movie, and I am A-okay with that, even if it looks a little wonky. So yes, there are animals, they look a little wonky, but then, like I've always said, moving figures and living creatures have always looked kind of odd in CGI. But here's the cool thing about this movie. Here's a little something you should know. They use practical effects. I know. My mind was absolutely blown. I saw makeup design, and real sets. Yes, this movie built sets. The actors were touching real things. I was about to cry. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was seeing an actual film, not an animated movie with live human beings tossed in there. It was a real movie, and it looked great. The cinematography in this movie was just really well done. There's a lot of really excellent shots. The movie looks good. The thing about this film that's awesome is it doesn't look cheap anywhere. It doesn't look cheap. Yeah, you can sit there and talk about the costumes or something not looking great, or maybe, swords or something not necessarily looking heavy enough. Okay, sure, you can complain about that kind of stuff if you really want to, but why? Why nitpick it down to its bare bones? When something good comes out, you should enjoy it. Don't beat it to pieces. This movie is fun, and that's just the way it should be. Another thing about this movie I really enjoyed is I truly feel like I might have seen the beginning of a much bigger franchise, a much bigger world. There's so much here that these movie makers can work with. It's not even funny. Sure, there's all of the D&D books, but there's still just tons of world and stuff that you can use. Like I said in the intro, this isn't based off of any of the books. This is just something they came up with using other things from D&D. And I love the way they did it. They sprinkled in some D&D stuff in there for all of us old players, but at the same time, they didn't overwhelm it so that newbies who might not be too familiar with Dungeons and Dragons still understand what's going on. There's stuff in this movie that would crack me up. Okay, it's in the trailer, so I'm not ruining anything for you. There's a scene where Michelle Rodriguez and Chris Pine are trying to escape from some guards, and she uses some cool maneuvers to get out of it. Meanwhile, Chris Pine is just frantically trying to cut the rope off of his arms so he can help his friend, who is beating the ever-living crap out of all these people. That, in my mind, made me go, she rolled a 20, he rolled a 1. That's the kind of stuff in this movie that I love. And the humor, I know I talked about it a little bit, so now we're to the humor part of this. It is just the right amount. And we were in a pretty packed theater, and I was hearing laughter everywhere. Lots of jokes landed. In fact, I would say every joke landed. Everyone chuckled at pretty much anything that was meant to be funny in the entire movie. It wasn't overdone. It had just the right amount. Had just the right amount of CGI. Just the right amount of humor, just the right amount of action, and just the right amount of charismatic Chris Pine. So you know what, guys? If you have nothing to do this weekend, get out there, see this movie, because it's going to be released this Friday, March 31st. I got lucky and got to see a sneak preview because apparently I'm an Amazon subscriber, but anyways. So get out there, see this movie this weekend. It is definitely worth your time, and it's worth your money at the theaters. You will be entertained. You do not have to be a D&D fan to enjoy this movie. You just have to have eyes and ears. That's it. All right, guys, thanks again for checking out the Film Geek. If you liked what you saw here today, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, and give me the old thumbs up so I know you like what you're seeing. And if there's one more thing you can do, folks, that is keep watching movies. You know I'm gonna.